Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the first session of the Sunoikisis Digital Cultural Heritage program for the 2017 to 2018 semester. This semester is jointly organised by myself, Gabriel from the Institute of Classical Studies at the University of London, by Rada Varga from the University of Cluj-Napoca in Romania, and by Tom Elliott from the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World at New York University. Tom unfortunately isn't with us this week, but he'll be joining us to say hello next week. This week we're going to give a very brief introduction to the program of this module, which is titled Digital Cultural Heritage, as opposed to the Digital Classics more general program that has been running in the summer semesters for the last couple of years. And we'll very briefly say something about the background of the Sunoikisis Digital Classics program. We'll look quickly through the syllabus for the next 16 weeks, and then we'll say a little bit more about cultural heritage and digital cultural heritage in particular, and about digital approaches to ancient history and how those can be useful for both scholars and students. So that's the outline of this week. The idea of this program in general is to focus more on the archaeological, the material culture, the heritage, geographic, visual, and generally non-textual and non-linguistic approaches to history, archaeology, cultural heritage, classics, art history, and the like. So the Digital Classics module in the summer tends to focus very heavily on language, literature, grammar, text encoding, linked data, and those sorts of approaches. There is a certain amount of visual and material heritage discussed in that, of course, because classics can't avoid doing so. But we're going to focus a lot more on the historical and archaeological and cultural heritage side of things for this fall and winter semester. So before we go into more detail of what this semester looks like, I'd like to invite Monica Berti, who's the organizer of the Sunoikisis Digital Classics program, to talk to us a little bit more about the background of Sunoikisis, generally where it comes from, how it works, and where we fit into that overall family. I think so.
Okay, Gabby, thank you very much. So hello everybody and welcome back to Sunoikisis Digital Classics. I say welcome back because this is the fourth academic year of Sunoikisis Digital Classics, because we started in 2015 in the spring semester. So the first academic year was 2014-15 with the first experiment, I have to say. And now this is the second fall semester, because originally we had only one spring semester per year, and now we have also the fall semester. So thank you everyone for this, and so we are still here. And I'm happy to say that in the end now we have about 60 common sessions online. You can find the material online in GitHub. For every common session, we have a class outline, links to readings, a description, exercises, and then, of course, on YouTube, you can still follow these 60 common sessions. But now, first, for new people, I would like to say something about Sunoikisis Digital Classics. Why this term, this Greek term, and then what is Sunoikisis Digital Classics. Sunoikisis Digital Classics is an international consortium of digital classics programs developed at the University of Leipzig in Germany, and now developed in collaboration with the Institute of Classical Studies in London. We started, as I said, in 2014, but the original Sunoikisis was born in the United States about 20 years ago. And It was born, I can say, at the Center for Hellenic Studies, where they have this national consortium for classics programs. They are still running every year courses for Greek and Latin. And the idea in 2014 was to develop a sort of subset of Sunoikisis for teaching how to use digital technologies for studying ancient historical languages, mainly Greek and Latin, but not only Greek and Latin, as you can see in our program. And so this was the idea to start this program involving institutions, teachers and students from many different countries, not only the United States, not only Europe, but also other countries outside the United States and Europe. And in fact, now we have 17 countries involved in Sunoikisis. At least these are numbers for last academic year. We will see this academic year if we have new institutions. So 17 countries and 33 institutions involved in Sunoikisis, with people teaching every week, instructors, and then we have students following us. As for teaching, so in Leipzig, for example, I have students in Leipzig following two courses, one in digital philology, Digitale Philologie, and the other for digital classics, Digitale Altertumwissenschaft. So I'm using Sunoikisis also in my classes, and the same is for Gabriel in London and for other participants. We have different activities in Sunoikisis, not only common sessions online every week, but we had in the past field activities in Greece and in Cambodia. In 2015, we were in Thasos for activities in the archaeological sites and the archaeological museum, especially for epigraphy. And then in 2016, a group of people from Tufts University and l'École Française d'Athènes was in Cambodia. In that case, I have to thank Michel Brunet for the help for the trip to Thasos and also for Cambodia. And we have also planning seminars in Leipzig for discussing the syllabus and new programs. And I also have an announcement because next summer 2018, we will have a 2 weeks institute at Tufts University, supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities. And this is a Sunoikisis digital classics activity, in the sense that, and this is a new activity for Sunoikisis, because we will have 2 intense weeks for working with other instructors and students, PhD candidates on different technologies. Of course, I will add information in our GitHub wiki about the date. I think it will be at the end of July 2018, but we still have to fix the date. So just to let you know. And now I don't remember if I have to say other things. I think I mentioned everything. If you are new to Sunoikisis, you can visit our GitHub repositories where you can find everything. We also have a Google Plus community where we post every week information about our common sessions, etc., and new activities. We have a Google group. You can join the Google group, of course, for discussing different topics about Sunoikisis, and then, of course, our YouTube channel. And I think that's it. And of course, I want to thank all the people in this hangout, because especially Gabriel, Bodard, Simona, because they have been contributing since the beginning to Sunoikisis. So thank you very much, and thank you for running these fall semesters. Of course, we need people, but really, I'm very, very grateful to Gabi and Simona, because they helped me since the beginning. And of course, also other people. Valeria, she joined us, and Rada, this year you are, I can say, new to Sunoikisis, so thank you very much for this fall semester, for organizing this semester with Tom Elliott. Tom Elliott is not with us, but he contributed to Sunoikisis last year, yes, because he was also in the fall semester. And then Lucia, of course, she contributed to Sunoikisis last semester, I remember, with classes on papyrology. And then, of course, a big thank you to our community around the world, I can say. So, Gabi, thank you. I don't know if I have to add other things, but anyway, we are always available for questions and other things.
Sure, great. Thank you very much, Monica. That's great, and also thank you for letting us ride on the shoulders of your glory. Take partial credit for this this whole thing, which wouldn't have happened without you. So this is yeah, totally just stealing your idea. So great, and yeah, thanks for that summary of the history of Sunoikisis. Before we move on to talk in a little bit more detail about the theme of this this semester, where we're talking about cultural heritage, I wanted to very quickly show the syllabus, which I think you can see now on the screen. So this is the syllabus is on the GitHub page that Monica mentioned. There's a direct link to the syllabus beneath the YouTube video for those of you who are watching on there. This syllabus for the fall 2017 program is on that page, and it is, as we said, a 16-week syllabus with a gap obviously over late December and early January for the Christmas and New Year and APA holidays. The 16 weeks of the syllabus are laid out here. This feels like quite a long semester to me. I'm used to 10-week semesters in the UK. Some people have longer semesters, of course. My semester with my students only runs from week 4 to week 13, probably, maybe 14. I forget the very end of term, but I think some people have semesters that start a bit earlier, some that start a bit later. So this should cover everybody's full semester, ideally. So as you can see from this program, the idea of this semester is to talk about a range of different topics that hopefully will give a fairly good overview. It can't possibly be comprehensive, but that hopefully will give a fairly good overview of some of the approaches, the digital humanities approaches to cultural heritage and history and archaeology and so forth. The main themes in here, which we'll talk about in a little more detail, are there's a large cluster of geographic sessions, there's a significant cluster of 3D related sessions, and there are various sessions about data structuring, data transformation, and the relationships between text and data, between image and data, and the ways in which we store and communicate and query structured information in these ways. I don't want to talk about every single class, but the sorts of things we have, we're starting next week with a session on crowdsourcing archaeological and cultural heritage data, which uses the Portable Antiquities scheme that runs in the UK as a case study that John Pearce from King's College London is going to talk about. Then we have the first of our imaging related sessions, which then take a break, and we'll come back in November with the 3D sessions. But we then have 3 geographic themed sessions, which will talk about geographic annotation and visualization of geographic information, in particular of linked geographic data. And then 2 sessions on geographic information systems, which is the fancy word for basically a database containing geographic information that can be mapped and queried. And those sessions are going to talk loosely about building geographic information system data, and then about interpreting and querying geographic information system data, respectively. There's still a little bit of flexibility at the moment as to exactly who the participants are in each of these sessions, where hopefully that will be completely solidified by next week. So we'll see all that in there. And we then have a few sessions on structuring data, where we talk a little bit about the concepts of structured data and querying data, which includes databases, but also spreadsheets and linked data, and various other ways in which data can be structured and queried and manipulated and visualized. And we'll have a session specifically then on data transformation, which will be an introduction to using Python in this way, which I think is very exciting. Some more general discussion of how we link images with the sort of textual and data focused approaches that we're maybe slightly more used to using in digital humanities, but the importance of connecting those two images is quite strong. And then we'll talk a bit again about linked data, specifically with reference to people and prosopography. I'll skip over the next couple of sessions because we'll come back to those in a second. We'll have some discussion then of network analysis, which relates to the person data conversation when we talk about social network analysis, and relates to the geographic information as we talk about geographic representations of or network analysis representations of geographical information. And then we'll come back to finally at the very end of the semester in January, we'll come back to linked data again with looking at epigraphic data, which is a unique combination of textual and archaeological data, which are really inseparable from each other. In the middle of that, there are four or so sessions on 3D technologies of one kind or another, which we're able to have these sessions almost entirely because we have the expertise here in the Institute of Classical Studies of Valerio Vitale, who is a 3D expert. And so she'll, if I may, I'll ask her to talk a little bit about why we have 4 different 3D sessions and what the differences between them are and what the pathway through them we imagine is. Valerio?
Hello, hi, thank you. Gabby, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah, and see you.
Yes, yes. So we will have this year 4 sessions about 3D related topics, which are separated and independent, but at the same time, they are also connected because we want to think of this as a sort of ideal workflow. So you don't have to follow all of them to be able to learn and to benefit, but we do think of it as an ideal pipeline, and the exercises as well will be built in this view. So all the classes will have pretty much an overview of the available technologies. Then there will be some methodological discussion about it, and then the exercise that, as I said, will slightly build on top of each other, but not necessarily. And the 4 different technologies that we have chosen are photogrammetry, which is basically about how to produce a 3D model of existing objects starting from photographs, and let's say discussing what is the relationship between the original artifact, the original object, and these 3D models. And then we will talk about 3D printing. I'm very excited about that because it will be the first time we will have a class on 3D printing, where we will see the opposite, if we want, process about creating material artifacts starting from digital files. And we will see how the relationship with the original objects become even more complicated in this case. Then we will have a class on 3D modeling, and in particular on how to use computer-aided design to build either existing or non-existing models from scratch, and how this can help us understanding ancient spaces. And last, again, we have a new entry this year, which is a class on virtual realities, which will be about simulating presence in digital space using immersive technologies. And again, asking how simulating, for example, movement in an ancient space can help us discovering something more about it. So I hope to see many of you during these classes, and it's back to you, Gabby.
Thanks, Valeria. Yeah, and the really exciting thing about that is going to be the way that those classes, as you said, link to each other, right? Because the 3D models that we build using photogrammetry and scanning in the first session can also be imported into the models that we build in the computer-aided design session, and the models that come out of both the photogrammetry and the design sessions can both contribute to creating models for printing and can be used as the basis for a virtual reality environment in the fourth session. So that sort of stacking of those classes, I think, will be very exciting for those students who are able to attend all four of them. I think that'll be very cool. So yes, thanks for basically creating that pipeline, which literally wouldn't exist without you. That's cool. So that's the program as a whole. I guess I could ask if anybody has any questions before we move on. Anything else they wanted to highlight? No. So then let's move on then to the next thing we want to talk about in this session, which is that Simona Stoyanova, who has taught on Sunoikisis many times before, and also who taught on a cultural heritage module in Leipzig a couple of years ago, is going to talk a little bit about cultural heritage, what we mean by cultural heritage, and what the digital approaches mean for cultural heritage. Simona?
Hello, let me just share my slides with you.
Great.
Sorry.
It's all right, don't worry.
They're in the same window. I need to just make them in separate windows. Okay.
Looks good.
Do you see the slideshow?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, good. So I'm going to give a very short introduction as to what we actually mean when we say cultural heritage, since that's the name of this class. So according to the UNESCO definition, which is what we're going to use, I think, for this module, there are three kinds of heritage: cultural, which has various different sub points; natural; and heritage in the event of armed conflict, which could be both belonging to cultural or to natural. Cultural could be tangible or intangible, and for the purposes of this workshop, for this module, we're going to be working with the tangible cultural heritage, which could be small archaeological artifacts, movable, so-called, so manuscripts, coins, inscriptions, etc. Immovable heritage, that would mean monuments and buildings and entire archaeological sites and so on. Or underwater heritage, which I'm expecting a class on that next year, maybe. That would be interesting. So that's what we mean by cultural heritage. That's the definition straight from the website, which you can follow on the link over there and read a bit more on that. So we think of cultural heritage as things in museums or buildings, historical buildings in our cities, but they're very fragile, in fact. A building can be destroyed by human activity or other natural disasters, not necessarily human disasters. An artifact could be lost or broken or stolen or smuggled, etc., which is why these things need conservation and protecting. How did the movement and the idea of cultural heritage conservation develop? So in the beginning, it developed as a national investment. The first, I'm not going to go through all of these, but the first manifesto concerning the protection of ancient building was set up to oppose destructive, or in other words, questionable restoration of ancient buildings. Then a bit later on, in Spain, the Congress of Architects decided that there should be minimal intervention in dealing with ruined structures rather than full-on restoration. And then a bit later on, the ideas of a common world heritage emerged way before UNESCO was founded. And also the idea that if proper conservation cannot be guaranteed, then it's better to leave the artifacts or the remains buried for protection. As we said, in the 30s, the idea of a World Heritage Movement emerged, but actually the first concentrated international effort to protect cultural heritage happened during the Second World War, when the Allies funded the Monuments, Fine Arts and Archives program, or the so-called groups of monuments men, which included specialists in archaeology, conservation, art history, etc., who would go behind enemy lines to try to hide, smuggle, protect in any way, or even just save archives with lists of cultural heritage, which was being looted by the Nazis during the war. Which they had significant success, etc., and that's how this is what led then to the Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict a few years later. The sign, you see the blue and white diamond sign, is the protective sign that identifies a piece of cultural property which should be protected during an armed conflict. Now, in the 70s, then UNESCO passed the Convention for the Protection of the World and Cultural and Natural Heritage, which is still in place. And in the 90s, the International Committee of the Blue Shield was founded using a similar, slightly lighter blue, but deliberately similar sign. And this committee works with local authorities in the cases of both natural disasters and armed conflicts. And I've given just a couple of examples of things that have happened recently, and some of them still happening. So let's say we've saved our artifacts and conserved our monuments. What happens to them once they are safe? An awful lot of research. So the first thing to happen is cataloging and archiving, but that's not uncomplicated. For example, we know that in the Louvre, each director introduces a new cataloging system to leave his or her mark. So inventory numbering is still a big problem in one of the biggest museums in Europe. Another difficult thing to archive and catalog is cross-departmental artifacts. So, for example, an Egyptian statue with a Greek inscription on the base. Do we put that in the Department of Egyptian Antiquities or in the Department of Greek Antiquities? Because they're one object with a complicated cultural history. So it's not as easy as just saving something and sticking an inventory number on it. The next step, depending on the state of the artifact, would be conservation and restoration. And here we have a number of different specialties involved, including various kinds of chemistry, depending on the physical properties of the object and its state of preservation. Also physics when we go into imaging. I've only given 3 examples of imaging: multispectral, reflectance transformation, and 3D. And you heard that you'll be doing lots of 3D later on, so that's all I'm going to say about that. And once we have preserved and imaged our artifact to our satisfaction, then it's not linear always, but then we can begin the research process when we actually extract meaning from our object. Once we've done that, then we start publishing. So to do that, we need to have citation schemes that enable us to point to our objects and to our publications and link them together. That means that we need stable and unchangeable URIs. And I've given an example for the canonical text services and site URNs just as an example of a system that allows us to cite both objects and images. And the use of stable URIs then would enable us to link the information regarding our object, and that's called linked open data. What happens, however, when we want to publish mixed content? So we have a text describing our object, but we also have various images of our object. Some of those images could be multispectral or reflectance transformation. So we need to develop mechanisms for citing mixed content when we publish our research. What about 3D models? Those are obviously very complicated, and Valeria, who's going to teach you how to do all sorts of exciting things in 3D, has been working on an ontology for 3D visualization in cultural heritage for a number of years now, and here you can see examples of two of her. So again, just you won't be asked to describe your models in this fashion, but this type of describing a publication does exist now, and that's great. So yeah, this slide just lists a few of the problems and potential solutions as to how we could approach the publication and citing of mixed content, including incorporating videos from excavations or documenting the cognitive process of scholars while they're deciphering a complicated object. So this is what I wanted to say, just a brief introduction as to what we mean by cultural heritage. I can stop the screen share now. Any questions? So do I need to expand or something, or we can move on?
That's great. That's a really useful summary of what we mean by cultural heritage and how it's a much more coherent explanation of what the theme of this semester is than my slightly tepid. It's all the things other than text that I started with. So that's really useful. Thank you. Yeah, unless anyone else has any questions or anything they want to add at this point, no one is jumping up and down. I think the next thing we want to do is that Rada, who is one of the co-organizers of this semester, is going to talk a little bit about digital humanities and how these digital methods and approaches are an intrinsic part, or can be an intrinsic part, of historical research and historical study generally.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's evening for me. So I just want to express a couple of ideas. This is a very general thing that I will present on the relevance of digital humanities and digital classics specifically, of course, for historical research. I am a historian, and so most people from my professional circles are historians. My students will be history students. Everybody is welcomed at the class, obviously, but the class will be organized by the Faculty of History, so we can safely assume that most of the students will come from this background and aspire to become historians. So the question I have been asked quite a lot recently during the last couple of years, maybe more than I would have liked to answer to this, was why is it important to use these digital classics, tool, technologies, methodologies for our historical research? So I guess my point is, besides being somehow cool, can we convince the doubting, can we convince the more traditional scholars that all this complex of technologies and methodologies which form the digital classics can actually lead us to new and valid historical conclusions? Of course, from my part, the answer is yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. We will never be able to convince everybody. I don't think this is the point. Diversity is good as it is. But we can bring arguments, at least solid arguments. I won't linger on the first aspect because this is very, very obvious. It is a huge difference between having all the, let's say, literary texts from the Greek, Roman antiquity in an online platform, encoded, annotated, and you just write a word and find it in all the texts that are there in that online repository. So it's a big difference between this and having to go to the library, look for all the books yourself. Maybe you won't find them all, or you won't find the proper editions, and then look page by page for the word you need. You might make more mistakes than the machine, because we are human, of course, because you get tired, because you might be pressed by time restraints. The counter argument is that people have been doing historical research with only pen and paper for hundreds of years now, and they were successful, which is true, of course. But I think that we are beyond that phase in historical research, and because we don't need to allocate so much time and so much effort to get to the source, because we now have the sources a click away, let's say, we can look into the really important stuff. We can dedicate those efforts for the research per se. And I think this is valuable. This allows us to go into more details. This allows us to even think more and think deeper and have more interesting research questions addressed to our data, to our sources, because they are there for us. And maybe this easy access to sources leads us to the open access publications as well, which Digital Humanities brought forth. Luckily, more and more funding bodies and more institutions request that the publications are open access, which is great. It's access to bibliography, which scholars had only in a limited way up until the last couple of years, honestly speaking. And this is the first thing which, as I said, I think it's very, very obvious. Maybe not always directly, but this digital classics, digital humanities, but I will refer to digital classics as this is the field of our interest now, give us the sort of input and the sort of openness which allows us to sometimes to reinterpret well-known historical data. Of course, we are working with more or less limited data, except the archaeological field, where new finds come forth every year. If we are working on ancient texts, we don't have a myriad of new ones every year, or every 5 years actually. But we can look differently at this new data. And this process of reinterpreting the new data has been made and is made through interdisciplinarity, by adopting and borrowing tools and technologies from other fields. Very few of the tools we are using in digital classics have been created for us or by us exclusively. We have a lot of examples this semester, I think. We have forensic imaging, we have network analysis, we have Python, we have 3D scanning, even linkage. Even linkage was not created by historians, even if it's so normal for us to use this. All these methods, all these programs, tools, allow us to get to new information. I will offer a very obvious example. Through 3D scanning and using morphological filtering algorithms, we can actually get depictions of irregularities from a monument surface, which are not visible to the naked eye. So we can actually read inscriptions which have not been visible until 3 years ago, let's say. And people consider them lost forever, but they are not lost. So I think this makes it very clear that yes, using digital classics and employing digital classics can lead us to new historical conclusions, to valid historical conclusions. Of course, the example I offered is a very hard and hands-on example. Others are more subtle and imply getting deeper into the textures of the societies we are researching, getting more shades of those societies. Last, I would like to address the issue and the question which has been discussed lately of how we have a lot of digital projects now. It's sort of in fashion, let's say. How relevant will they be in 10 years' time? Do we need an umbrella for these projects? Do we need a mega aggregator? I don't think we have an answer to any of these questions, of course, because they are very, very complex and the answers depend on many, many things. Yes, we do need aggregators. We need source aggregators, of course. We need repositories. We need to have all the Latin inscriptions and their context, their archaeological context in one place, as the EDH offers. We need to have unique identifiers, unique IDs for various objects as Trismegistos has created. We need to have unique identifiers and georeferencing for places as Pleiades has offered. We definitely need these things. But besides them, we have all the other small projects, which I think we have to look at them as we look at any other research, written, printed, or in any other form. They are researches which answer to various research questions and are created to answer the questions and the needs of a group of researchers. This group can be 3 persons or 300 persons, of course. As in their validity in 10 years, let's say, if we are talking about technological validity, then yes, if we don't update and upgrade our platforms, in a couple of years' time, they probably won't be compatible with the operating systems on our computers anymore. Accepting this is accepting with that we are living in a world which is fastly advancing and fastly changing, and this is good. This is why we are here. This is why we are doing digital classics, I think. The validity of the research itself, so not of the technical part, depends on many things, of course. I don't know, how many of us can say that we are completely and thoroughly proud of all the articles we have written 10 years ago? Probably not too many. But this doesn't mean we shouldn't have written them. They helped us evolve, and they most probably helped other people get to some information, which was okay, even if maybe some of the interpretations are not what we would have done today. And this is normal, this is evolution for a person and for science in the end. And finally, I believe that this is exactly what Sunoikisis has proved during the last couple of years through this great diversity of common sessions, that we have a lot to learn from each and every individual project in the end. I think this is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rada. That's great. Yeah, I liked your general overview of the ways in which digital humanities and digital classics help the scholar and what they bring to us and what they do. I think there's a common misunderstanding that or it's an assumption which to me is a misunderstanding, that basically what computational methods allow us to do is to work faster. So you can find text much more quickly than you could do if you had to read hundreds and hundreds of pages on paper, and that therefore it's there to make our lives easier. It makes scholarship less difficult than it would otherwise be, because all sorts of things. And I think both of those are actually incorrect statements. So yes, some things are made faster by computing, and certainly a lot of the more mechanical tasks, as you were saying, the creation of new editions of new texts, the sorts of concordances that a 19th century scholar might have spent their entire working life after 40 or 50 years of research, of reading thousands of different texts and making meticulous notes about the reference to a certain medical symptom across the entirety of Greek and Latin literature, and then would publish this one monograph at the age of 70 about this. So I think it was incredibly important work, of course. It took 50 years. Any graduate student can now search in the TLG and in Perseus and wherever else, do the same, get the same base data set that took 50 years for this 19th century scholar in 5 minutes. That's, I can't quite count how many orders of magnitude faster it is, but that's not just it's made it faster, right? Saying that's made it faster is an absurd way to characterize that. It means that no scholar can now justify spending 40 or 50 years creating a little concordance by hand and publishing one monograph, right? No one can get away with that. Digital methods haven't made the life of the scholar easier, they've made our lives harder. Right? Because we now have to do other things. We've spent 5 minutes doing what used to take 50 years. We now have 49 days, 11 months, 29 days, 23 hours and 55 minutes to do the really hard stuff instead.
Yes.
We have to get deeper. We have to, we have to go under the surface. We have to break that. I mean, that's a simplification, because obviously the scholar who spent 50 years reading all of Greek and Latin literature had also at the end of it read all of Greek and Latin literature, which was a benefit in and of itself. But yeah, I think you summarized that very, very, very usefully.
Yes, it is much easier and much faster if you are using an already existing resource. For the people who created Perseus or the TGL, it wasn't easy and it wasn't fast. I mean,
right.
We are benefiting from people's work, which was just as meticulous and just as hard as nonsense. I don't know.
Yes. Yes. No. Absolutely. Yeah. The TLG, which is now what you might call in a mature state, where you can use it for almost anything you might want to use it for, except downloading it and data mining it and doing anything that you can't do through their paywall, but you can do all of the searching and that they can do all that sort of stuff with.
Yeah.
Is only just in that state, and the TLG was the database was started at about the same time that I was being conceived. So it was being conceived about the same time that I was. So and that's almost as long as the career of a 19th century German classical scholar ago. So yeah, that's not easy. It's not easy work. It's not
a lot of hard work, and this continuous work behind all the tools and resources, which we are using them easily, of course, because we are just using them. We're not creating, training, and anything.
Yeah.
And if I can add something, well, I definitely agree with you. And the thing is that we still have and we still want, I can say, write monographs, but also we have data. So our work, if I can say that, is bigger because we still have to produce traditional scholarship, which is not bad, but we have data. We have to work on the data. And the thing, yes, now you can do things faster, yes and no, because we have... of course, we have fantastic tools now for searching and other complex computational tools for getting data, but we have a lot of data to work on. So in the end, it's not so fast, but that's the big challenge that we have. And if I can add something about what you mentioned in the end, Rada, about the diversity of what we have in Sunoikisis, I think we have to mention this because especially for new people, if you look at our syllabi, you can see many different topics and maybe you can be confused. Okay, they don't have a program, they just have common sessions about this and that. Well, first, this is a consortium for a consortium of digital classics programs. So the idea is to teach and to learn, because we learn every common session to use these new tools. So that's why we are trying to cover many different possible tools. But if you follow our sessions, you will see that we have in the end, very few specific common threads, if I can say, because in every common session, even if they are about 3D or about geography or about tree banking, you can always see the same problems, the same issues we have now. So if you have a traditional perspective, our syllabi are totally confusing. They are not traditional in this sense. We don't have one topic. We tried in 2015 with a course on Thucydides, but then in the end the problem was that we had many people say, no, but we want more. This is not enough, even if Thucydides is a big topic, of course. And so the idea was to experiment with a different perspective, the perspective of digital tools and digital technology. And given that we are a growing community, we need to focus on this. So that's why we have many different projects focusing on working with different material and literary sources, but then discussing in the end the same problems that now we have, I think, to deal with and try to teach and to learn. So this is important because I understand that our syllabi are not easy at the beginning, and you can see many different topics, but there is a reason behind that. This is not just a chaos. Yeah, so there is a program behind that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And besides that, the Sunoikisis common sessions are used in teaching by, or will be by, many of us. So this is very good that they are very diverse, and we have a lot of subjects, because you can choose from there which ones are interesting for our students. And if you have clusters of some common sessions on the resembling topics, you can group them, and you can actually give an overview on a matter, a very complex overview on a matter to the students. So I think this diversity is very much involved in teaching as well, and it's very useful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. This actually leads very well into the final topic we wanted to talk about in this introductory session, which is how different people use these Sunoikisis common sessions and how people might use them. We actually, as Rada says, the vast majority of people who participate in Sunoikisis don't necessarily follow the entire syllabus from the beginning to the end and have their students follow them. I sort of do to a certain degree, although not the whole syllabus, as I said at the beginning, but I'm unusual in that I think possibly even unique in that I use the Sunoikisis sessions as, if you like, it's not quite a good match, but as the lecture part of the module that I teach to my students. So my students will follow from week 4 onwards. They will watch one common session on one Thursday, and the following Tuesday they will have a seminar and a tutorial. So they then spend 2 hours in a room with me. I have small classes, so we can do this, and they will do the seminar reading that is mentioned, that is given in each common session's overview page, and they will do between the common session and the following tutorial, they will attempt the exercise which is given at the end of every common session for them, and then we will give them some hands-on support in the class and discuss how this might be used. So So the exercise and the readings are the most important part of that. My students don't write an essay for their assessment. So the essay titles that are given in the common session, we don't use, but other people might do, or they might use them as inspiration for the course, for discussion and for assessment. But what my students will then do is they will do a practical project, which is then assessed largely as if it were an essay, but it'll be a practical project. So they will take either one of the exercises from one of the sessions and build that up into something much larger, or they might take several different things, both from the course and a few other things that they may get from elsewhere or from their reading, and combine them into a larger and more complex project. Obviously, it can't be a huge project because they're doing a project which they're being assessed as if it were an essay. So, you know, the amount of time they would normally spend researching and writing a 5,000-word essay, they should try and spend the same amount of time planning and building and then reporting on their practical project. However, you know, however much that might be, you know, 50 hours or 100 hours, or however much time, you know, a student spends on that, on one piece of assessment. But it could, as I say, combine multiple things. So if one of my students wanted to do their assessment, their assessed project on something related to 3D, they might include in that project both an element of photogrammetry and then an element of manual modeling to build that into something, and then printing of a new object based on that. That development work, and you know, I'd write their report on all three parts of that process. Or they could do it on, you know, modeling a building and then generating a virtual reality environment based on that, which can be made available. And so the assessment is both looking at the virtual reality, seeing how well it works, and reading the report based on that. So the various different things that are built in. Or, you know, you could combine 3D and geography by building, you know, some landscape environment into your virtual reality as well, or, you know, whatever. There's all sorts of possibilities that students can do. Other people will have different approaches to how they assess and how they use this module in their teaching. Some people have made this available to their students just as sort of an external resource, and it's not part of their teaching at all, except, you know, some things they might look at. Some people might combine the classes that are offered this semester with reruns, if you like, of bits from the last 4 years worth of common sessions to create a sort of virtual module. And so some people, you know, I mean, you'd effectively be putting the videos of these things in your bibliography for your students to read. So different people will run this in different ways. As I say, my students, if any of them are watching, although our semester doesn't start for another 3 weeks, you know, will follow these courses pretty directly and exactly and so forth. But others will have a different approach to this. Rada, you have a different approach that you'll take with your students.
Yes, and one of the reasons is that my students will be undergraduates. Of course, if postgraduates want to come, are interested and want to come, they can, but most of them will be undergraduates. So some of them might actually be from the first year BA. So I will combine clusters of common sessions, and I will give them the videos as bibliography, as you said, let's say, on the topics which are most interesting to them, or which I assume will be most interesting to them. We will see that. And we will try to do the exercises. Some of the exercises I will select them, and we will try to do them together in the class after they have watched the videos, ideally. And I have been thinking very hard if I should ask them for a project or an essay, but I will go for the essay. Actually, not necessarily the essay. I don't want to see and read I don't know how many words, but for a presentation at the class with the other colleagues attending and everything. Because I think a project is a bit too much, a project which involves historical research and the digital classics part, and it's a bit too much for the really young ones. So this is how I am thinking about doing the class this year. We will see how good it goes. We will see if they have, I will count on their feedback. And I will adjust the syllabus in the following year according to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Monica, do you have any students this semester?
Yes, I have students. Technically, my course, my Sunoikisis course in Leipzig is in the spring semester, in the sense that in the fall semester, I teach digital philology and for graduate students, the master students, and of course, if I want, we can use Sunoikisis for specific topics. But the actual course is in spring semester, where I have the two courses, Introduction to Digital Philology, and then I have specifically a course, Digital Classics, is Digitale Altertumwissenschaft, which is a course where students have to follow Sunoikisis videos, and then they can choose one topic and work on that topic and produce a small project. So this is how I work with students in Leipzig. So there are many different options for using Sunoikisis with students. We also have instructors without students, of course. This is a possibility because there are people who don't have courses. And the other thing is that we can have students presenting their work in our common sessions. So this happened in the last academic year and also before, since the beginning. For example, Neven Jovanovic from Zagreb, he has students, and then at the end of the semester they present together, so we have a common session for them. So this is another possibility, because I have to say that it is, we have students following us on YouTube, I know that, but it's difficult for them to join the Hangout. I can understand, of course. We were students, we were shy, and so we are still trying to see, but we want students, and we have the possibility to involve them in our weekly discussions. Of course, the big challenge we have, but I have to say that in the end we are successful. The big challenge is that we have so many different academic calendars, because we have many institutions, many countries, and also in Europe, in every country, we have different academic calendars. But we are working on that, and this is another reason behind this diversity. For example, for the spring semester, we have a long semester of more than 20 weeks, because we have countries with an early spring semester starting in January, or other countries with late spring semesters, like Germany, for example, where we start in April. But we have found, I think, a good solution for involving different people. So there are people who follow us at the beginning and then they leave, and other people who join us later. And so, but I can say that we are still here. We are still teaching Sunoikisis, and our community is growing, and really joining forces is good, because such a program would not be possible in one institution and taught by one person, of course. So
right, which is the whole reason that Sunoikisis ran in the first place, right? Because you have institutions that, as here, I wouldn't have the expertise to teach an entire course on digital classics and cover everything, and I also wouldn't have enough students to justify running this. I mean, I have usually 3 or 4 students taking my module for credit, and maybe the same number again auditing it, but that wouldn't be enough to justify a whole MA program. Whereas, as part of a much larger thing where I only do some of the teaching, but my teaching is benefiting not only my own students but also various other students around the world, it becomes worthwhile, very, very much so. And as you say, as well as having instructors taking part in this who don't necessarily bring any students with them, who don't have any students, we also have students who follow this not as part of a course, not with their instructors, but who follow it, just independently. Either students who are studying somewhere where there aren't any instructors teaching this sort of subject, so they follow it because they know about it, or even people who aren't currently studying can follow this. And I know there are at least a couple of people who regularly follow the Sunoikisis modules who are in that situation. They're not there with their instructors. They're not doing this for credit. They're not They don't have any extra support, but everything they get is from YouTube and or from Google Hangouts. And I wanted sort of to on that subject to extend an invitation. If anybody is watching this and is interested in getting a little bit more support for this, if they're registered on a degree of any kind, but not one that offers this course, and they're anywhere within reach of London, please do get in touch with me, and I'd be happy to have people auditing my seminars and tutorials here, as many PhD students, for example, will audit it sometimes. But also anybody, if you're following this module from anywhere else in the world, and the common sessions are not quite enough for you to get everything from it. There are several instructors here, and I suspect it's actually all participants in this. Pretty much everybody who contributes to this would be delighted to receive an email from a complete stranger who says, I followed your class on YouTube and I need a little bit more help with this. I mean, it's to be able to reach people who we didn't know we were reaching actually will make us very, very happy. We're more than happy to help you with that. So anybody who's watching this and wants to get in touch, that would be great. I can't promise this in perpetuity, but if you watch this video, if you're watching this video now in 2019 or 2021, although the date on this was maybe 4 years ago, those of us who can still be found at a university address, you can still get in touch with us, years later. That would also be great. That may not be everybody. Some people move on, but how cool would that be? Someone gets in touch and says, I watched your 2017 video and I'd like to know a little bit more about, we'd love that.
Yeah, I agree on that. And one other thing I would like to mention is the language. Of course, we use English and we teach in English, but we have various ideas to add other languages. First, now it's possible to add, for example, subtitles in other language, in other YouTube videos. We have a community in Brazil. They are working on that for adding subtitles and using the videos in their class. And hopefully we will have also other translations into Spanish. So we have an idea to involve people in Spain and in South America to involve students there. So maybe, and we have also in Egypt a community for Arabic. So they now, Usama Gad is leading Sunoikisis Digital Classics there for students, and they teach in Arabic. And there is an idea also of adding again subtitles in Arabic. So this is something that we are working on, of course. Yeah, for adding other languages. Yeah,
that would be very cool. It's equally cool, but possibly difficult to figure out how to execute. Would be if we had people, occasionally participating in these common sessions without having to speak in English. Someone could participate in this in another language. If we could get someone to subtitle it as quickly as possible, I think that would still be useful to us and very cool, right? I mean, if we had someone talking about Greek philology, are we really going to insist that someone who can only speak Greek can't participate in this? If we have someone talking about Arabic philology, are we really going to insist that someone who could only lecture in Arabic can't participate in this? That would I mean, that is where we are now. But I don't want to say it's absurd, but it would be great if we could break that.
Yes, I think it's possible, but as for now, at least if people who don't have a good knowledge of English, but they can use our videos if they have also subtitles, so they can read. Of course, then they have the class outline where they can read, not just listen to English. So as for now, the idea is to have subtitles in another language to help students without another knowledge of English. And then the other idea, and we already have people working on that, is to have local communities in different countries. For example, in Brazil, they are teaching a lot within Sunoikisis in Portuguese, and then in Egypt the same thing. So this is what we can do now. Of course, a multi-language common sessions, that would be great maybe in the future. So we come in this hangout from different countries. So definitely in this hangout, we have many different languages, as I can see. Yes, definitely. So we could do that, for example.
Absolument, on pourrait tous parler dans notre langue maternelle, pourquoi pas?
Oh yes, of course, we also have French. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Italian, Bulgarian,
exactly.
Romanian, all delivered here. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, definitely. So
just to make the point, everybody's welcome. Yeah, great. Cool. Does anyone have anything else they want to add to this session?
I just wanted briefly to add my personal use of, I don't teach a module, but I do use the Sunoikisis sessions, for example, when I'm giving workshops and someone asks me, you know, can you talk a little bit more about this? But that would actually be, too much of a digression for my workshop. I can say, if you want to know more about Epidoc, if you want to know more about linked open data, go to Sunoikisis, and that is actually very, very useful to me, and I've got good feedback from the students as well. So they're quite happy to know that there is such an archive of topics that they can access.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, this is very useful. I think. We're not claiming, are we, Monica, that Sunoikisis is a MOOC in the normal sense, right? I mean, it is an online learning environment, but it's not a full program.
It's not massive. No, it's not massive. It's not a MOOC in this sense. Yes.
Yeah. So we can't offer it as something that people could follow and just using this only end up with some kind of qualification or equivalent. But it is a massive teaching resource that can be incredibly useful to people. And I think someone could, in theory, pull together a dozen different classes and turn them into a MOOC, right? I mean, they would have to do various other things in order to do so, but just giving one or two classes to students, giving one or two of the sessions as prerequisites for people to watch before they come to a workshop to save time introducing the basics when you have a limited time, those sorts of things. I think this could be incredibly useful for. Yeah.
Yes, we're not a MOOC. We will see in the future what happens, what we can do. So we are still experimenting, I have to say. And another thing is that someone said, well, Google Hangout has limits because we can have only 10 people in the Hangout. But maybe this is also good because otherwise we can't manage more than 10 people in one common session, session of 1 hour. And so this is good. In any case, we have YouTube and there is a chat in YouTube. So we follow so that's why I'm here. Also, Gabby is here. So while the instructor teaches, we can follow YouTube and see if there is a chat there. And the good thing about the YouTube chat is that you can still read the chat after the common session. This is not possible in the Google Hangout, or at least I don't know how to do it, but in any case, we can have a chat there with links or the discussion. So
I just noticed, in fact, that Osama Gad is in the YouTube chat saying that the idea of doing a multilingual session sometime in the future is a cool idea. So we should definitely get
I read that now. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And yeah.
Okay, then that's great. If no one has anything else to add urgently, I think that's more or less the time we have for this session. The general outline of these sessions is that we try to have about 1 hour's worth of content, and then we have 15 minutes for discussion, but which in practice is also used, as a buffer for the inevitable snafu that might happen during the sessions. Somebody's network goes down, or somebody can't screen share, or something goes wrong. A fire alarm goes off in the middle of the session. All things which have happened in the last year. So we start at 4 p.m. London time, 5 p.m. Leipzig time, whatever that is in the rest of the world, and we go on for 1 hour and 15 minutes, which we have now done precisely So I will say good evening to those of us for whom it's evening, and thank you all. See you all next week for a presentation on the Portable Antiquities Scheme and on crowdsourcing cultural heritage and archaeological data. Great. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.